oh my God, there's so many things I want to talk about in what you said. So first and foremost, our colleagues. So like
Yes.
I rant about this on the channel a lot. They're not okay.
No, they're not.
We have a north of 40% substance abuse rate in our field,
Mm,
supposedly, according to the Bar Association. We have a
right.
1 in 7 suicide attempt rate in our field.
Mm,
We have 9 plaintiff-side employment firms went under this year in New York City. And I don't
hmm
understand how that's possible because how do you not make money in the field? But I think what it is I think people go into debt. I think people get big checks when they help someone. They spend like crazy and then they don't think about when's the next check going to come. They
right.
don't think about it. And you get weird calls like, hey, will you take my caseload on? Well, yeah, I guess, sure, but like what's going on? Are you okay? I can't pay to service it anymore. I can't pay my staff. I'm like, how? Like I don't fully you know what I mean? And it's just like a weird industry. And then you can borrow against the cases, but the valuation of the cases is so uncertain that
hmm
it's not like personal injury, where they'll
Right.
banks will just cut personal injury firms $5 million loans, right?
Right. Right.
And they don't do that with us. So you get people who are
Right.
just calling you up like, hey, I just need a little bit to make it through the month. And I'm like, you made $2 million last year. It was
Right.
in the journal. What are you
Right.
talking about? It's
Right.
gone. It's gone. It's gone. You took 40 and 40% is the correct amount. I agree with you completely
Right.
for a fully featured premium actual litigation firm, which is what you are.
Correct. Correct.
Fully like, listen, if you're a settlement artist, get 25 and go fuck
Right.
yourself, maybe. Like that's whatever. If you're flipping cases, I'm not interested in your 40%. But if you're the real deal, and even if you're settling the case, you're excuse me, you're bringing the pedigree of what you can do. 40% is the real. And let's not lie about it. There's a firm of old white men who got 50% approved. Like they did
Really?
it. These motherfuckers did it. They did it. And
Where, Vincent?
I will send it to you. One of them has since died, but they did it. They got away with it.
Wow.
And it bothers me
It does
that
bother me too. That's
they
a
got
lot.
away with it because
Right.
they're old and maybe some other reasons. And maybe they paid the right campaigns, maybe they did this, maybe did that. I don't know. But why are they hassling other firms about 40%? Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And listen,
No, it doesn't.
nobody viewing this is going to be thrilled that I'm saying this. Everybody's going to be like, you should charge 25. But then there's no firms that actually do trials
Right.
because trials are expensive. We can't.
Not only are trials expenses, getting people, let's, if we're going to have a conversation, let's really have the conversation,
Let's
right?
do
Because
it.
I'm all about
I'm in.
honesty, right?
Let's do it.
Then how many people like us have the experience, the goodwill to federally prosecute these cases in front of these judges with a 60% dismissal rate in the district hanging over their head to do that well without cutting corners, paying court reporters, the investigators, experts, everything that you need to litigate the case, and have the team and the talent to really support, who have the time and the willingness and are not burnt out. We are a dying breed, my friend. And that's why I believe we really need to invest in the next generation of attorneys so that we can continue to fight this good fight. We cannot lose all of our good people to the defense side. We cannot make the plaintiff's bar always I guess I'm going to be broke for the rest of my life choice. We can do this. We can do it well. We can sleep at night in our, in full conscience on, right? And make money. That is a possibility. And what that's going to take is it's going to take the named partner of the firm actually being at the negotiating table. I am not interested in just taking a seat back and letting my goodwill run for me. Maybe that's bad business. Maybe that's why I'm a lawyer and not a business physician. But it's also why I never liked the business of law, but I liked the practice of law, and why I worked under other people's banners for so long. And I made the decision that if I was going to do this under my banner, that I was not going to change that aspect. It was still going to be me. And the only way that I would step back even a little bit is if I was able to duplicate myself and as many times as humanly possible. That's the only way that I was going to do it. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
That's incredible. I get criticized a lot for being more business minded than attorney minded. I'll make a quick argument. I'm here. I'm here.
Right.
But I'll make two quick arguments for that. I am a fairly mediocre attorney. But I know what good attorney we have you on the line. I know what good attorneys sound like. I know what they do. I know a good attorney when I see one. So if I can put together a firm that hires good attorneys and cooperative attorneys such as yourself, I'm going to help people. Second argument, I've never had a first year make less than 6 figures, ever. And that to me matters because when I was a first year, I based 32, did not have health insurance. And when I worked on a case that won literal millions of dollars, they said, we're not going to pay your percentage. You look shitty. You look shabby. We're going to buy you some custom suits. And I was like, no. I need to live on that money. What are you talking about? My base is 32. I have 100K in loans from law school. What do you mean not going to pay my percentage? Right. And one of the reasons why I went out and started my own firm very rapidly was couldn't collect on my percentage, which is a real problem in this field. So counter argument, and I love the argument, I'm not a true attorney's attorney, and you are. But there is value to the business side because the business side, we have a training program. They all make very good money, even as first years. And we all know, listen, no shame, no disregard to first years. They are more work than they produce. Teaching them correctly is a full-time job in and of itself, and they will not be useful until their second years. It's just my view on things, right? But you have to do it because you don't get a second year otherwise. And you can't just poach other people's second years because there's not enough of them because nobody can afford to make second years. So we get to do some of those things. I do agree with you about being at the table. There's no disagreement there. And that's the last part of my practice that I maintain. I work as an arbitrator for AAA. I mediate, but I also, for our cases, where it has value, I'll do it. And sometimes it's just a relationship. There's a lot of firms that are like, I know that guy. I've done 70 cases with that guy, and it's like, hey, Steve, how's it going? It's just, it is what it is. Right.
But it is largely a relationship-based industry.
And the clients often don't understand that. Like my perspective is defense counsel, they're the bleeding edge of prevention, which is a good thing. They can stop it from happening, which to your point about being made irrelevant, I would love that to happen. But 2, they're the people who cut our clients' checks.
Absolutely.
They exist to evaluate the risk and say, oh yeah, better pay on this one. Right? Like that's the gig. They're doing trials the same clip we are, which is almost never. We're running a north of 98% settlement rate right now. I wish we had more going to trial, frankly, because we pay for that expensive trial attorney who's our mutual acquaintance. But we can't because people want to pay. But that's my pitch for the business side. I don't actually disagree with you about anything you're saying. There's some value to the business side, and I have to make myself feel relevant.
I mean, I think you're doing a phenomenal job. Well, and the business side is certainly needed because it can't just be lawyers litigating and no means in which to keep the lights on and the overall functionality of what it is that we're doing. I mean, you said, a few moments ago, 9 plaintiff side firms went out of business in New York City. And I cannot imagine that, because I know attorneys that are okay and
Yeah,
they're
say
doing
it, say
very
it.
well.
It's so weird. There's no correlation between good attorneys and firms that do well at all. I was joking the other day. I used to work for a guy whose like tagline was, "I'm an animal. I'll fight for you." And he would say it to every client, and they would hire him. And I'd just be like, "Really? That's that's what works? Like
Yeah.
that's what gets people to sign retainers?" And he's not a bad guy. Listen, he's worth a lot more than I'm worth, so he's doing great. Clearly he knows a few things, but it's just not the best litigator is not the best at the business side, which makes sense. But there's no reason in this industry for the good litigators to not be making tons of money. This is the best means of turning time and attention to detail and aggression into money that I have ever found, ever.
Correct.
And I don't understand how firms are going out of business, and I don't understand how we have colleagues who aren't doing well, but are litigating well.
To your point, there is something to be said about the system in which we are all operating and trying to do well in, right? So here are some stats. We've already talked about 60% of these cases being dismissed on motion. Then the other stat we're not talking about is how almost 75% come back with a defendant's verdict. And then we're not talking about 50% of those plaintiff's verdicts having verdicts that are below $100,000.
Yeah.
So that's one set of statistics that you have to grapple with. Other sets of statistics that you have to grapple with. We are fortunate that we're in a jurisdiction like New York that has the New York City human rights law or the New York State human rights law, where there is no cap. A lot of states do not have a local anti-discrimination, anti-sexual harassment statute. So they're stuck with that $300,000 cap that Title VII gives them, right? So that's number two. The other part of it too is and when it comes to economic damages, that's really the portion that is easily calculable. The ones that is up to the discretion of the jury and the judge is emotional distress. And you and I know that when it comes to what they call garden variety emotional distress damages, when it gets to severity, they're not giving these seven-figure awards the way that when they're calculating these emotional distress, they're looking at things like whether they were treating, whether there was a suicide attempt. And I don't know about you, but in my culture, before you go to a therapist, it's because your mom died and your husband left you in the same week. Like there's like the level of extreme emotional distress that you have before you even think about dialing a therapist. There's nothing that talks about the resiliency of living with anxiety, depression, and all of those things that can come from being discriminated against and still showing up every day and working. And the functionality. And even if you get that seven-figure verdict, that remittitor is going to come in like clockwork, right? So there's more going against you from that perspective. And then if I had to add one more pearl to this like shit cake, right?
Please do.
That I described is when you're successful and you get the seven-figure verdict and they try to do remittitor and you're successful on that, now you got to fight and sing for your supper for your attorney's fees, right? Because they think that a top-notch civil rights attorney with 20 years experience, that somehow $500 an hour is way out of the realm of what is acceptable, possible, when your counterparts, the white shoe law firms that you're defeating to get up to this, are getting $1,200, $1,300 an hour that they sign off
16.
on nothing.
I saw 16 last week. I saw $1,600 an hour.
Wow.
And literally, so somebody said to me, like, listen, I'm gonna flat rate this trial for 80 grand. And I said, that's not a good deal. Like, what do you mean? Like, he was like threatening me, like, I'm gonna flat rate it for my client for 80 grand. We're gonna do this trial. And I was like, that's not good. Like, you're telling me that we should just get more in settlement. He's like, no, that's cheap. I'm like, what do you bill per hour? 1,600.
Wow.
And I was just
Wow.
like, okay, I guess.
So when you're dealing with those type of odds, it's only going to be the people who are like, this is just wrong. And we need to make sure that we're holding people accountable. And at the very least, that we're giving our clients at least a piece or a slice of justice, right? That people who listen, I understand the ins and outs. I know who the players are. I know what the case law is. I know how these cases are treated. How am I going to maneuver this in such a way to give my client the best possible outcome in the circumstances? And sometimes that doesn't look like, them testifying before a jury. Sometimes it doesn't. But if that's necessary, I'm willing to do that too. And I can't do that if I'm hungry. If I'm
Yeah,
thinking, oh, well, if I take the settlement, I'll be able to pay my mortgage this month. I can't do it that way.
no.
I have to be secure, financially secure. My team needs to be financially secure. My firm needs to be well funded. And the only way that that works is if I charge what I'm supposed to charge and I make up my value with what I bring to the table.
And you actually wait and collect.